Good news. I arrived at Germany for the first time. Station 1, Munich. I always wanted to visit a real concentration camp and sympathize with the people who were forced to live in there. It would also mean that I would learn a lot about the history of Nazi Germany and World War II. Following my trip to Munich, I decided that visiting Dachau would be perfect. However, you might not have heard of the Dachau Concentration Camp, but chances are you have probably heard of Auschwitz-Birkenau, the infamous largest and deadliest concentration camp in the whole of Europe. And it can be said and deducted that Auschwitz was a copied model of the Dachau concentration camp. Dachau was one of the first concentration camps erected in Europe in 1933, and also among one of the largest. More than 200,000 people were imprisoned there. In this trip, I will be taking you through a virtual journey through time and space and find out about the many horrors of being detained in such a place in Nazi Germany. Hey everyone, my name is Matthew, and we are currently in the Dachau concentration camp in the outskirts of the town of Dachau. So inside are the remnants of the infamous Nazi concentration camp dedicated for Jews, Romani people, and communists. So what are we waiting for, guys? Let's get inside. In the background, you can see the former Gestapo, or the secret police headquarters for Dachau. It was where many senior members of the Nazi government met together in order to discuss the future and plans for the Dachau concentration camp and its satellite camps. During the Weimar Republic, it was an abandoned ammunition factory from World War I. After the Nazi grasp of power, it became a concentration camp dedicated for political prisoners. After the start of the war by the annexation of Poland, it started to act as concentration camp. After the war, it first served as a prison for defendants in the Dachau trials. Then, after 1948, it became a refugee camp. On the screen, you can see the Appelplatz, which is the first thing that comes into view when we enter the concentration camp. It is the location of the infamous roll calls, where the prisoners had to stand perfectly still in order to tally the prisoners' numbers and to demonstrate public executions. Turning right, we can see the Dachau Museum. It exhibits many photographs, texts, and also some artifacts such as documents from the Nazi period of occupation. For example, there is a very interesting chart about the badges that the prisoners wore. For instance, a red triangle represents a political prisoner. Green triangles represent preventive custody or criminals. Purple triangles represent Jehovah's Witnesses. Black triangles represent asocial or homeless people, plus Romani and Sinti or Gypsies. Pink triangles represent homosexuals. Blue triangles represent immigrants. Mentally handicapped people have a white band with "stupid" written on it. Criminal police arrested people, including many Jews, have a brown triangle. Escapees from the camps, including small offenses like not folding the blanket properly, have an extra red dot below it. Jews, as we all know, have an additional upside-down triangle to represent the Star of David. In addition, there are also documentation of human experiments conducted in the Dachau Concentration Camp. These experiments were conducted by an SS doctor named Sigmund Rascher, whose life is very explosive. Originally, he was one of the favorites of Heinrich Himmler, the head of the SS. After that, he was transferred to the Dachau concentration camp and conducted experiments on hypothermia and malaria in particular. However, he tried to fraud Heinrich Himmler by demonstrating that his wife could have children, even when she is almost 50 years old. However, these children were all kidnapped. Eventually, he was sent to the Buchenwald concentration camp and murdered there in April 1945. Inside, there was also film footage about the American liberation of the camp. After I came out of the museum, I was greeted by a large perimeter. It was reinforced with several defenses in order to prevent the prisoners of this concentration camp from escaping. To my back is the bunker, the ultimate prison of this prison. Many important political prisoners were detained here, including George Elser, the failed assassin who tried to assassinate Adolf Hitler. The conditions in these cells were horrendous. For instance, there was a regular cell divided into 4, each only several centimeters wide. Prisoners were expected to squeeze in the tiny gaps without food, water, light, or adequate air for several days. Now, to my front are the many barracks used to hold prisoners inside this concentration camp. Although there were dozens of barracks at the time, only 2 were preserved to this day. After I entered the barracks, I was greeted by multiple layered bunk beds that spanned throughout the room. Perhaps 50 people had to cram into one tiny dormitory. A typhus outbreak started and killed many of the camp's inmates, and overcrowding also meant low rations, which led to many inmates dying of starvation. Although none of the other barracks survived, I could see the outlines of them, large rectangular buildings. Now, at the end of this corridor of barracks, there is a chapel at the end. It was reserved for the clergymen in prison here. Now, that was not because the guards were nice. In fact, it was built only because of a bribe from the Vatican. Yeah, that is the Pope himself. There's a chapel, an East Orthodox church, a Protestant church, and finally, a Jewish place of worship. Finally, turning left leads to the cruelest and most infamous structure of the Dachau camp. Yes, that is the crematorium. The crematorium, also known as the Barracks, was a literal killing machine. It starts with a disinfecting room, which disinfects the victim's clothes. Then there's the waiting room, the derobing room, and the infamous gas chamber. Then there's a room called the death room, where the bodies of the victims were stored. Then there's a crematorium, where the prisoners had to burn the bodies of their fellow inmates. Although no particular evidence of the use of the gas chambers were found, we cannot exterminate the possibility that they were used for mass murder. Luckily, all of this monstrosity ended in April 1945, when the Americans liberated this concentration camp. Let's take a moment and watch this video. please, if you enjoyed it, please click the subscribe, like, and the share button below. Please, that's the motivation for me to keep making awesome videos like this. Thank you so much for finishing this video, and see you next time.